Hey, this is Timothy. I'm glad to be with you. I just want you to be able to listen to some of the things I'm going to be saying. I believe it's important. It'll change your life and everything that you're doing if you listen and pay attention. So, again, it's important to do that. I mean, more than anything else, we have to be willing to learn. Yeah, thank you guys. We got to be willing to learn, okay? And that's what we're doing tonight. We're going to learn some things. We've been talking about the image, the right imagination. You have all the right words, but you got the wrong image. And there's some people that have the right image and they don't have any of the right words. So, what I'd like for you to do, if you're watching this live, I'd like for you to be able to tell me where you're watching from, if you don't mind. Just leave a comment, make a comment, leave a comment. Just say, I'm watching. Just give your town or whatever that you're watching from. I would appreciate that very much. And then also for YouTube, if you hit the subscribe button, because these are over in YouTube, they're going there. That's where they're going, is YouTube. We're on Facebook right now, but they will all be Facebook and YouTube. So if you will, leave a message where you're watching it from, I appreciate that very much. And so what we're talking about is Psalm 78:41. And it talked about that the children of Israel limited God. And the reason that we limited God is because we think of things about what we do. And this is what Abraham learned. Abraham learned the secret. He learned that what God had promised, God is able to perform. Who's able to perform that? God is able to perform that. Now, it might require faith from you, but God is the one that performs it. And this is the key to the whole thing. And we appreciate seeing Josh from Klamath Falls. I appreciate that. I appreciate you guys listening and watching. And so in Psalms, 78:41 talked about they limited God. Now, here they had been through the Red Sea. I mean, here Moses strikes that Red Sea. That sea opens up. And no, not the way the television view done where the wind dried it out. God opened the Red Sea and they immediately got on it. Okay, which meant he dried the bottom out somehow or another. He went deeper enough to where he dried the bottom of the Red Sea out so they all could walk across it and get across it. And it said that the children of Israel didn't remember the things that God would done and had done for them. And so as we go down this path, we're thinking about what I can do. It's not what you can do. It's you learning to deal with what God can do, learning how to let him do the things that he does. And it's amazing what God can get done. Okay, it's amazing. I mean, it says if you cast all your care over him, he'll take care of you. It means he takes care of it. Some things you can't take care of. If you could, you go down there and take care of it today or tomorrow. There's some things that you can't handle or you can't do. There's nothing you can do. There's nothing you can do. There's not anything you can do because you're not God. And what you got to do is you got to learn to let God be God and not limit God. But we limit God because we think in the terms of what we can do. And so I remember I got ready to pray for this lady in Klamath Falls, actually. And I see that a number of people, thank you, watching from Klamath. I appreciate that very much. It's amazing. We were praying for this lady, got ready to pray for this lady. And when I got ready to pray for her, after Jesus had appeared to him, there was this tangible anointing, and his presence would show up in the service through the person of the Holy Spirit. And I got ready to pray for this woman, and her eyes, she was almost legally blind. And I got ready to pray for her, and when I did, all my feelings left. I had nothing. I mean, it was like, can somebody else pray? I don't feel like praying, okay? All of a sudden, I was all cranked up about praying because when the gift of faith works and the gifts are at work, I felt all of a sudden, you get fully persuaded. When the gift of faith is at work, you're fully persuaded. I mean, you're persuaded somebody's going to receive. But all of a sudden, I felt empty. I felt nothing, zero. In fact, I stood around and I stepped back. And the Lord all of a sudden took me back to a childhood vision of me watching my brother and our next door neighbor, Heenan Flemings, and Ben McFall. They were digging these fence posts behind our old barn. And I don't know, I must have been 8 or 9 years old. And they were in physical shape. Both of them were physically fit. I'm talking about they had their shirts off. They were digging those post holes, and they were going at it like crazy, okay, and sweating all over. And my brother Ben was in top shape, and then Heenan at that time was in great shape. And, the Flemings next door, just great neighbors. We had Lily and Jim that lived next door for a while, and then Margaret and then Jim, and then Heenan and them took the house next door, and they were you couldn't ask for better neighbors. I'm telling you, you could not ask for better neighbors. Heenan would be there to help you anytime you were doing anything. The Flemingses would be there to help you in the same way we did with them. They were doing something, we were there to help them. That's what neighbors would do in those times and periods, and they're still that way. They still help you, do anything they could possibly do. And so And here I am in the service. I'm here. I'm praying for this lady, and all of a sudden, and I close my eyes, and I'm watching them dig this fence post. Okay, and they were in physically good shape. I mean, they were in physical condition. And I remember my brother Ben used to win money. Uh, by he would these old clotheslines there in Virginia, everybody had clotheslines, and he would stand with a clothesline up to somewhere around his head, and he would bet money that he could jump over that clothesline flat-footed. Acrobatically, I don't know how he could do that. I don't have any concept. I've never attempted to jump over a clothesline and throw my body backwards and compel it up into the air and go over that over the clothesline, and he would win money. And those who knew him would never say a word because they knew somewhere down the road they'd be somewhere and they would win money. Okay, so nobody would talk about what he had done and what he was doing because they knew somewhere down the road they wanted to win money. Okay, and so they wouldn't talk about it. But I remember that image got inside of me about how physical fit they were, how physically fit they were. They were sculptured. Their bodies were sculptured. Arnold Schwarzenegger, if you lift really heavy weights really slow, you bulk up and you get big muscles. And if you use small weights, what you do is you sculpture yourself and your body gets toned up. Well, when I got in high school, I remember one of the first things I did, we lived in Alexandria, Virginia, and then over at Four Corners. And I remember about the time I got into high school, I ordered from the back of one of those magazines from Joe Wilder, weightlifting course, okay? And I remember the day that came, I had this big, thick magazine. It was out, I don't know, it was pretty thick. It was like an inch and a half thick, something like that. And I started then studying about weightlifting, and my body got sculptured. I mean, I was in tremendous shape. I mean, just amazing shape, okay? In tremendous shape. I was into tremendous shape and got into physical shape because that image got inside of me by seeing my brothers. Because whatever image you put in you, you'll conform to it. And if you have an image of what you can do, then you'll limit God. And what we have to learn to do is, not what God. Don't limit God by what God can do. God can cause men to give into your bosom. God can cause changes at work. I mean, I've seen God in the court system get people, their sentences changed and get people to do things that were just beyond what your natural mind could think about what God can do. God can get things done. But our problem is sometimes we, try to limit God based on our understanding and by what we can do and what we think we can do. And so going back to the woman standing in the service, and here's the Lord showing me when I was a child, me watching them dig this fence post, and both of them were digging these fence posts, and I mean, they were going at it like two wild guys, and they were putting these fence posts in, and they were sweating, and I hadn't remembered that hardly at all. I remembered it because it had such an impact on me. So by the time I got in high school, I got myself in shape, okay? It took weights to do it. I don't know. They done it by working, okay? I done mine by weights. And so I'm back in the service. I get ready to pray. And the Lord then, as I'm watching that, I was like, Lord, what are you showing me this for? He asked me, he said, who's digging the fence post? You or your brother or Heenan? Who's digging the fence post? I said, well, they're digging the fence post. He said, well, who's doing the healing here tonight, you or me? I said, well, you are. He said, then there's no sweat. And it was like God life divided, no sweat. Why? Because all of a sudden I felt like I had to do something. I'm not the healer. God's the healer. But what God needs from us is faith and trust in him that would be able to, to change our perspective on things and realize what God can do. And that's what the children of Israel got in trouble for, because they were not remembering what God had done and what God can do. And as a result of that, they limited God. And so we limited God because we think in the terms of what I can do or what we can do, not what God can do. And it's amazing what God can do. I mean, God is God. God can get things done. He can cause change to come. And it's amazing what he can do. I mean, I don't even want to, how would we even limit it, or how would we even say what he can do? He can outsmart somebody. If you got somebody that's not living for God and they don't know God, if you're trusting God for their salvation, God is smart enough to get your little twerp turned around. God is smart enough to get your mama turned around. God is sharp enough to deal with whoever we think we are. He knows exactly what to say to get us to head it down in the right direction, and that's what he'll do. He's able to speak to somebody and get them turned around in the right direction, and if necessary, he'll send a donkey. That's what he had to do with, as you read and you find the scriptures with Balaam, he had to send a donkey to talk to him. He'll send a donkey to talk to you if necessary, if you're trusting God. And so, what's important then is for us not to limit God by what we can do, but start to think about what He can do. Now, here they are with Jesus. Here's the disciples. They're in the back of the boat. They had pushed off and getting ready to go to the other side. Jesus evidently was tired because he goes into the back of the ship, the hinder part of the ship, and lays down and goes to sleep in the ocean. Well, while he's asleep, a storm came, and the ship is tossed him back and forth, and he's sleeping through that. So he must have been pretty tired. Okay, he's sleeping through this storm, and here's the disciples. All 12 of them are on this ship with him, and the ship is tossed back and forth, and they get into this argument, man, about who's going to wake him up. And then one of them finally they wake him up. Is like, don't you care we die? Okay, and so then, instead of saying, "Oh, bless your little heart, it's going to be okay," he rebuked them for their unbelief. He expected them to take authority over that storm. They got rebuked for not taking authority over the weather. I mean, we think, now I'm just telling you what Jesus did. He rebuked the the disciples at that time. They eventually became apostles, but the disciples, he rebuked them at that time for not taking authority over the weather. So here you are, you're laying in the hospital, and you're thinking Jesus is going to come in down the hall, and he walks in your room, and you're thinking he's coming there to pat your fevered brow. Instead of patting your fevered brow, he rebukes you for trying to die. And the reason why is because God does not think the way we think. Obviously, God is God. God is able to do anything in your life that you believe Him for. He tells you that. All things are possible to him that believeth. All things are possible to him that believeth. I see we have people from all over, and I appreciate that very much. Out of Florida. Hey, Rebecca, it's good to see you from there. And then my sister Charlene's watching from Speedwell, Tennessee. Thank you, sis. I love you very much. And again, happy birthday. A little bit late, but happy birthday. Thank you for watching. I appreciate my family in Virginia and Kentucky and Tennessee. She's in Tennessee, Speedwell. So here then, as we go down this path, here they are. You're thinking that he's going to console you, but instead of consoling you, you get rebuked for trying to die. I mean, he rebuked him for not taking authority over the weather, and he rebuked him for trying to die. And here they are on the ship, and you're thinking, that Jesus is going to pat your fevered brow, and he'll rebuke you because all things are possible to him that believeth. He expects you to get your faith turned on. And that's why what I'm teaching on about changing the image on the inside of you by learning to meditate and learning to use your imagination through imagination, learning to use your imagination by meditating imagination. Because he tells them in Joshua 1:8 to meditate therein night and day. You say, meditate. I know the Hebrew words for meditate. I can talk about, yes, sir, the Hebrew translation there means conception. I understand about the words of meditating. I can go through that process with you. I understand that. But the main important part is it's using your imagination. And so when you're meditating something out, you're using your imagination to look at it. And so that's how you're able to meditate night and day. So if God says that you're healed, then you start meditating and seeing yourself well. Then in Psalms 2:1 and Psalms 1:2. So in Psalms 1:2 says, if you'll meditate in God's word and his promises, you'll be like a tree planted by the water. You will always be producing fruit. If you meditate on his promises and on his word and the law of his word is the law, okay? It is the final say-so. When you say the term laws, wasn't meaning legalistic laws in those terms. So what God expects you to do is to spend time meditating, seeing if he says that you're healed, then see yourself well. If you see yourself being prosperous, then see yourself prosperous. I remember Kenneth Copeland was telling a story that he got upset about Jerry Savelle. And now some people get upset about Kenneth Copeland. I don't maybe agree with everything with Kenneth Copeland in some of the areas, but I will tell you he's had 150 million people born again through his ministry. And most of them were overseas, yes, but 150 million people are first-time registered born-again people through his ministry since the conception of his ministry in the 60s. He's had over 150 million people born again. Yes, the devil hates him. Yes, the news media people hate him. Yes, the news media, the fake news, has done everything they could do to try to stop him and turn Christians against him. And most people don't even know what he teaches. They just heard their little denomination tell them what he taught. They've never heard what he's had to say. And the same thing with Jerry Savelle. Jerry Savelle's going home to be with Jesus. But someone gave Jerry Savelle $1 million, and Jerry Savelle began to believe that and see a check being handed to him for $1 million. He every time he turned around, he'd get up and meditate. God says, "I'm promised beyond anything my mind can conceive," and he'd see someone reach him $1 million. Okay. And someone says, I felt compelled to give it to Jerry Savelle. And Brother Copeland's like, I didn't one that needed that $1 million. But the Lord says, no, but he believed me for it. You didn't believe me for it. You could believe me for it. And so it caused him then to turn his faith around and start understanding that he needed to trust God for finances because they were struggling for finances way back in the beginning. And then they got that door opened up. They got that avenue, that spigot opened up of finances because they were learning to trust God for finances. Because what happens is you get up every morning and you see the same car and the same house and the same bank account. You're thinking in terms of what you can do. God can bring change into your life. And it's sometimes unexpected. I've had God unexpectedly bring change and bless me beyond ways. Not because I'm in the ministry, not because of those areas. In business, I've seen God just open doors. Everything that I'd done, he would open these doors and he would cause it to happen. I mean, he would cause business to come to me. I mean, unbelievable. Enough to where the corporation that we was working with, as far as owning 2 franchises, sometimes they would want to know, what are you doing? Okay, I'm trusting God. Okay, I'm trusting God, and I would see, and it was all visualizing, all putting forth in those areas. And the way that I done that, I would see us increase in businesses and the amount of jobs that we're on. And sometimes we'd be on 30 or 40 jobs rebuilding houses back at a time. Well, you can turn some cash when you're doing that. And God caused that to happen. Other people didn't have the same problem. Other people were smarter than I were. I mean, I was raised being dyslexic a little bit, and I believe I've been healed of that. But I can remember being in corporate, went to go to school, Donna and I did for 18 days, had to go to school. And I never did learn how to do an estimate. I never did learn how to do the actual function of all the things you had to do. I was smart enough to hire somebody that could do it. Okay, I was smart enough to do that. And so as a result of that, God began to open doors for us in business. Now, what kind of businesses did we do? I mean, when we first started out, we painted houses. Now, I hated painting houses. But I was good at it, but I hated it. Even today, 20, 30 years later, I drive by buildings that we painted. And it was, basically I'd learned the secret of painting, okay? I mean, but as a result of that, we'd paint these houses. But we didn't like painting houses. And then we detailed houses out and worked for real estate companies. And then we owned all these other different kind of companies. And the reason that we owned them is because we'd be sitting somewhere and all of a sudden God would show it to me because we would trust him for the areas of finances. So what comes first? Faith comes first. It takes faith trusting God. That's what James says, that if you trust God and you're in faith, then God can cause the wisdom to come. The wisdom doesn't come until you trust him. No, you will not be able to see what to do. No, you will not understand how to make money until you start to trust God. Then out of nowheres, you'll be at some restaurant ordering food, and out of nowhere, you'll look over and you'll say, I think I can make me, you get that glary look in your face where you sort of like when you're in the shower, you zone out. Sometimes I've seen people, when they drive, they zone out, okay? They zone out, and then they start to see how to get things done. But what God needs from you is he needs your faith. And the way you get your faith turned on is you get the right image of the word in you. Because words paint images. Words create images. Words are just used as an expression to release what's on the inside of you. If you've got a lot of unbelief in you, you've got a lot of trouble in you, you've got a lot of pain in you. Have you been around somebody who's in a lot of pain and going through struggle? They will tell you about it. It will come out of them, and they will express. I mean, you take people that are having problems with whatever it is. If they're in a marital problems and you get around them, you are going to hear about such and such. You're going to hear the struggles that they're going through because it's going to come out of your mouth. And those words are trying to express about how bad you feel. And they're trying to express to you, I am hurting bad. I am really hurting. And they're trying to get you to understand. And the reason they're telling you that is because of how bad they're hurting. Because they're trying to release in those areas like that. Hey, we even have from Michael Rabel from Mexico. Hey, it's good to see you. I appreciate that. And Rod Insure, I appreciate you guys. Going right on down through the list there, I appreciate you guys watching. I appreciate that very much. So what God needs from you is he needs your faith. So how do you get your faith turned on? You're trusting God. If God says you're healed, then you need to see yourself well. But what people do is they see themselves sick. They see what the doctor says. They get on the line and they start researching about what sick people look like, and what they go through and what they're expecting. And they start watching people, they get prepared to die and they die. But God, again, is expecting you to meditate out. Psalms 1:2 says, if you'll meditate out his word, the way you meditate it out is you use your imagination to see the end result of what the word says that you are. If you believe you're prosperous, then you need to see prosperous things. And what God did, we believed in a number of properties over the years, and God rid and sold those properties, okay? And the way that we done that, we believed we would receive it. We would, when we get ready to believe we receive, we write the date down and the time. If I was believing for my healing for something, it would be January the 29th at 7:25 p.m. I believed I received my healing for that. And then I lock into that, and then I see myself well doing the things that way before would be able to go do it, I would see myself do it. I'd see myself riding a bicycle. I'd see myself, down Waikiki, jogging along, okay, with Elvis, okay. I wouldn't see myself with Elvis because that'd be fantasizing. But, this is the difference is I would see myself, running somewheres at all. I used to see myself running all the time, and I'd run 6 or 7 miles a day all the time. And you find yourself, whatever you put in you, that's what you end up doing. So what God needs from you, he needs you to sit down and take his word and then start to say, God, what would prosperity look like? What would healing look like? Because you can take somebody who's totally sick, really sick, and they'll think, I'll never be able to overcome this. And when I was having heart problems, I have to be honest with you, I didn't know if I would ever be heart problem free. I am heart problem free. I laid there when they had tried to find a heartbeat, okay, and I laid there when my heart was doing crazy stuff. And I remember one night rolling over down, and I said, I don't think I'll make it through the night, okay? Help me, baby. I don't think I can make it through the night. And so, because it was I was having such issues, and the devil killed my mother that way. And I remember the night that my mother died, and I remember what Dr. Suntory said the following points after that there in Pound, Virginia. He said her heartbeat was the most erratic heartbeat he had ever heard. And so obviously the devil tried to kill me with the same thing. And so I just want you to stay, okay, I need to put the right image inside of me. And that's what I had to do. My heart's healed. My body's healed. I'm very thankful to God. I get up every day and I see that, and I do what healed people do. I walk, I exercise, I do those kind of things that I need to be doing. But I see myself doing it, and that's what you need to do. You need to see yourself do those things. If you can do those things and you can build the image inside of you, that'll get your faith turned on. And what you're attempting to do is get your faith turned on so God can work on your behalf. You need God to work on your behalf. I tell pastors, you need to see that church filled 10 times. You need to see a large facility. I remember visiting Virginia Beach with the Jimenezes, and I went out and I looked. They were building a city at that time. Now, he went ahead and went home with Jesus and didn't have a chance to finish that city. But I was out taking a look at the city, at what they were building. It was amazing the work at what they were doing, and had visionary to do that. Had the vision to do that with, but because he's seen the city, he built those in those areas, and that's what you need to do in ministry. You need to sit down and say, okay, what does my children's ministry need to look like? I want a 500-person choir, okay? I want this. You need to begin to see those kind of things as the end result of that. Okay, I appreciate you being with me. Again, we'll be back with you Wednesday night. Thank you very much.